We're talking about this tape airing last night of a 2006 interview with O.J. Simpson and Judith Regan. And what happened in 2006 was this. O.J. Simpson, for years at that point, he was living in Florida, and for years he had been approached by many people to do a book deal, projects, all these things to do a book deal about his life, whatever it was, and he had turned them down. Enter Judith Regan. Now, Judith Regan, who is Judith Regan? Judith Regan is a publisher of books, kind of tabloidy, things like that, but she's always, she had built a history of kind of being able to make money publishing a bunch of books. She approaches Simpson this time, and she approaches Simpson with a twist. Well, what's the twist? Mainly the twist is, I've got a lot of money to give you up front to do a book deal, and the book deal is going to be a hypothetical accounting of how these murders back in 1994 were committed. And this was offered to Simpson in a way which, of course, it is very seedy. It's very perverse. It isn't at all something that I find desirable. As a matter of fact, the concept is downright despicable. It's poor judgment. But what it did do in 2006, when Mr. Simpson was living in Florida, still had young children, was still reviewing his finances, the amount of money offered to him up front, which was somewhere near $750,000, I guess was too good to refuse. This was just a cash grab. And so what Mr. Simpson had to do was he had to work with a ghostwriter. So Mr. Simpson got a lot of money in this. I mean, Judith Regan just assured him it's minimal work. That's fine. This book is just going to make millions and millions and millions of dollars. It's going to be very, very good profit. Simpson, at the time, he went along with it. And so, but there's a catch. Part of promoting this book was going to be doing an interview. And guess who was going to do the interview? Judith Regan. Well, Judith Regan is not an interviewer. This is the thing about last night. We'll get to that in a second. Judith Regan is an interviewer. She's a book publisher. So the book was done. It was completed. There were already 400,000 pre-orders of this book. I mean, it was, for whatever perverse, despicable nature you can think of this book, which I agree with, it was going to sell really big. But Judith Regan got a little greedy. Judith Regan wanted to do not just a one-part, she wanted to do a two-part special for this taped interview that would precede the actual release of the books. And so now when you think of last night, you're thinking of about 3 or 4 hours of tape that Mr. Simpson eventually, well, it wasn't eventually, Mr. Simpson was contractually obligated to do this interview in order to promote this book. So that's what happened last night. So when you look at what happened last night, Mr. Simpson, I've made this very clear, Mr. Simpson's an adult. He makes his own decisions, and he lives with the consequences of it. Now, this interview should have come out in 2006. Now, because of it's now being characterized as a public outcry, it was the family members of the victims came out and had websites and garnered some significant support in other areas. And Fox wanted nothing to do from it. They got an apology. They canceled it. They fired Judith Regan for doing something in such poor taste. And Rupert Murdoch, who then was the CEO of Fox, he actually issued a personal apology to the families. You know, I guarantee you Rupert Murdoch has probably never apologized before that, and he's probably never apologized since. So he gave an apology, and the books were all destroyed, or most of the books were destroyed. There are several that have remained, and I actually was able to read, one of them, one of the books. So last night, I want you to know this. Judith Regan, did you watch it, by the way?
I haven't seen the entire thing.
Yeah, all right. Well, here's my notes from last night, and this is the main note. Simpson is an adult. He has to live with the consequences of what he did. He participated in this. It was a cash grab. It was blood money. He took it, and now he has to deal with the consequences of it. Even though it's 12 years from now, it should have been back in 2006, but it's coming out 2012 years from now. But I want people to know this. The 2006 Simpson is not the 2018 Simpson, okay? That spent a decade in prison and had some serious time to think about his life and what's important and how to make better decisions, okay? So he's disclaiming any participation in this book at this point in time. He recognizes that it was a big mistake and bad judgment, no matter how much money was thrown at him to do this, okay? So he gets that. My notes from last night is this. My criticism is directly towards Judith Regan. Judith Regan is very well aware that she and the ghostwriter are the ones that scripted and wrote this book mainly, especially and exclusively the chapter dealing with the murders. All right, Mr. Simpson had no part in that whatsoever. Okay, he didn't. The one thing though last night that bothers me the most is now Judith Regan, who was fired in disgrace. I'm going to make that clear. She was fired in disgrace for such a distasteful and despicable book. She now is trying to reinvent herself as this somewhat of a hero, this heroine who got Mr. Simpson to quote unquote confess. And that's nonsense. You know, it's a joke. Judith Regan was doing a scripted interview, an infomercial, if you will say. It's a grotesquely disgusting and despicable infomercial, but it was designed to inflame people almost in a sense so that they would go out and write this book because people thought they were going to see this, you know, hypothetical scenario or confession, which when you read the book, it doesn't even make any sense, okay? So you were sold fool's gold. So my criticism is of Judith Regan for now trying to rebrand herself as this hero who got some kind of confession, when the reality is she was in bed and in cahoots with Simpson, knee-deep in it with him in all of the greed and the despicableness surrounding the creation of this book. She's the one who created it. She offered it. She's the one who got the ghostwriter. She's the one who said, let's do this interview as part of promoting the book. It was all the brainchild of Judith Regan. So Simpson's going to have to take his lumps, obviously, but Judith Regan needs to take her lumps too. And the public needs to be reminded that Judith Regan was right in this thick and thin. She was not, you know, you're interviewing me right now. You don't have a financial interest in anything that's going on between us right now, okay? You're an interviewer, you're a young, good-looking guy, you're developing your career, your reputation. This is what you do for a living. You get paid by another network, and you're interested in your ratings, okay? That's not what Judith Regan was doing. Judith Regan was not a professional interviewer. Judith Regan was sitting there promoting a book. That's what she was doing last night, okay? And so for her to come out now with these prepackaged puff pieces now that she's doing today to resurrect her career, that's a fraud, okay? Judith Regan is, what she did last night was every bit as despicable as what she did in 2006, and there's not a shred of remorse for her, too, okay? So don't try, my message to Judith Regan is don't try and distance yourself from this. Your behavior is just as despicable as anyone else involved in this book.
But, you know, the effect still stands on his perception is reality, even though, as you say, it's just as he tries to rebuild his life here in Las Vegas, you know, I mean, throughout the whole Vegas case, do you worry that just the rehashing constantly of the California murders, does that hurt him at all?
I don't think ultimately it's going to hurt him, but it's obviously a concern. You know, I'm not going to sit there with a straight face and tell you that it's not when it is a concern. My thinking is this, though. Mr. Simpson has always maintained his innocence. Innocence has been his position all along, okay? He has maintained that since he was first arraigned back in 1994, and that's what he continues to maintain. So that's what I'd like for the public to know. This book, even he would admit that at this point this book was a mistake. It was in very poor taste. I've gone on record as his lawyer saying I think it's despicable, okay? His own lawyer has done that. So that's not it, but you also have to, the public needs to be reminded that this was in 2006 this was done. So a lot of people are getting the impression that Simpson is doing this now. He's involved in this now. He's now profiting it from it now in 2018. The 2018 Simpson is a retiree. He enjoys a great life here in Las Vegas. He loves the town. He's fallen in love with the people here. He's treated very well here. So yeah, it's a concern, but he's moved on from that, and we'll allow this to blow over. But the biggest thing is for anyone, including this network, to continue to rehash this. The blame is on them now, okay? The blame now is on Judith Regan because my instincts tell me that Judith Regan still has her hands in the pot. She's certainly trying to rehabilitate her career from last night. You see that, right? So this is not something Simpson wanted to be done in 2018. He has a much better attitude towards life and a much better vision towards having a good life. So that's it. So he's disclaiming any ownership in anything related to this book. And he wants people to know that it was fictionalized, it was simply hypothetical, and yes, it was in poor taste, but at the end of the day, it was a cash grab for him to secure his financial future, not only for himself, but for his family.
It almost seems there's a contrast between the national and and what we've seen in Las Vegas, because it seems like for the most part, you know, he just goes around town, and sometimes people run into him, and it's just kind of normal day-to-day business, and then you see national, and it's like all this stuff blowing up, you know.
Well, Vegas has been very good to him. He's been treated, quite frankly, he's been treated like a major celebrity here. He's been treated like a rock star, and he's earned that, though. That's not something that we've gone around and faked and tried to promote or anything like that. He's just simply, I think the people of Las Vegas generally sense about him that this is a man who belongs here in Vegas and is welcome here. A lot of people in Vegas from all across the world with all their flaws, and he just fits in well here. And he loves the town, and he means to do very well here and be a good contributing member to the Las Vegas community.